Okay. Um, I believe we're live now. So assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining all of us. I'm very, very excited to have this conversation in particular. It's probably gonna be my favorite one for the year, which might be why we saved it for the very end. But just to have a few housekeeping rules before we do jump into everything. We do have the chat going, so if you have any questions, you can drop it in there. And at some point, probably in the second half of the conversation that we have, we are going to try to touch on all of them, maybe go through on all of them, depending on how much time. And then going from there, we will be able to kind of essentially just have a conversation. It'll be just light and easy. We'll get as much as we can from our two wonderful guests here. And that's it. So that's more of the housekeeping. Pretty plain and simple. If you have questions, drop it in the chat. And here we go. So I'm very excited to announce that we have two of the co-founders of Project UP, or Project Unleashing Potential, which is a grassroots organization, nonprofit organization that primarily works with Black Muslim women, works with the community, and helps to empower and create programs and opportunities for them to grow and to essentially be very active members of the community. They are also involved in other projects, and we will also touch on their sort of educational background to get a feel for what their experience has been like and what their journey has like. So I say sit tight. We're gonna get quite a bit out of this conversation, and make sure that you ask all your questions while we do have this opportunity. But for starters, I'm going to let both Sara Omar and Shama Saleh introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Hannah, for that great start and introduction. So I'll start.
Sure. Yeah.
So my name is Shama. I'm from the Kitchener-Waterloo area, born and raised. I went to University of Waterloo for a Bachelor of Science. So majored in health studies, minored in political science, two very different fields. But you probably will get to know me over this conversation that I'm very, a lot of my interests are very different and interesting. I like to do a lot of trial and error, a lot of, I like taking a lot of risks and really diving into things that interest me. And I'd say right now in my life, a lot of my interests are really in community development, social justice. I'm really trying to lean in towards, with my minor in political science, really anything politics. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And in terms of, I guess, my work within Project UP and my passion there, a lot of it is, I guess, stemmed from athletic development. So I was very active in my youth. And so I was a part of a lot of sports, specifically soccer and basketball. I used to play competitively. And so within Project UP, I was able to sort of support that domain within the organization. Yeah, and I guess in terms of hobbies, I really, I used to love poetry. I still love poetry. I used to do spoken word. Don't do it anymore. But I used to do a lot of like creative writing, still do a bunch of reading, and things like that. So that's a bit about me and where I'm at.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, Hannah, and everyone joining this live. Thank you for having us. And my name is Sara. Born and raised in Saudi Arabia, and then lived in the UAE for a few years before moving to Canada a couple of years ago. Now I call Hamilton home, but when I moved first here, I was actually living in Kitchener, so that's where I met Shama. But yeah, in terms of education, I did a bachelor's of medical lab sciences. Very, very sciencey background, worked as a lab tech for a few years. and then kind of decided to do a career switch when I moved here. And then I completed my master's of global health at McMaster. And yeah, these are like my interests really revolve around just women's health, research, global health, and health advocacy. And within Project Up, I was very interested in the like health domain. And another skill that I actually wanted to develop was social media communications. And within Project Up, I was the external relations coordinator. So kind of like just overlooking all our social media platforms and everything like that. And yeah, that's all my role.
So mashallah, you guys have quite the wealth of experience, I'd say. It sounds like both of you touch on different parts. So it's not just science, there's physical activity, there's sports, there's the arts. So mashallah, that's really wonderful to hear. Because I think sometimes there's this sort of perception that we need to just hone in on one skill, but we can be so multifaceted, and it's nice to be able to develop each and every skill and to build new ones as well in areas that we might not be familiar with. So definitely a breath of fresh air to hear about, mashallah. Now, in terms of, I know you touched a bit about what you mentioned your role in terms of Project Up and what that was about, but do you want to maybe give us a little more info about what that looked like, what the project was about, what maybe inspired it, what your focus was? Just give us a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, I could start. So Project Up, or Project Unleashing Potential, has a few domains. So we focused on athletic development. So developing people who were interested in specific sports and sort of working from the basics up. We also had a focus in creative opportunities. So anybody that was sort of interested in the creative space, art space, painting, photography, poetry, that sort of thing. So we had a lot of workshops and programs around that. And then we also were able to provide mentorship programs and leadership workshops. And that really varied. So luckily we were able to run mentorship programs within the organization, which were really successful. And then in terms of leadership, we were a bit creative. So leadership for us would look like maybe potentially bringing somebody in, like some sort of facilitator that would maybe run a workshop and teach girls skills around leadership. But we would also, we're really big on applying those skills as well. So we would allow girls to volunteer at events, to, for instance, host events, or do some sort of public speaking for them to be able to actually work on their skills in real time. And so those are sort of what our focuses were. In terms of the girls that we worked with, like we said, Black Muslim girls that, range in terms of their ethnic background. But in terms of age-wise, it was mainly high school and university, I'd say. Right. Sometimes, we'd have girls that were a bit older or girls that were younger than the high school age. And usually they would be siblings of other people who were involved, which was fine. And so they would also join our programs and events. And I don't know if you want to talk about inspiration
I think you touched upon.
Yeah, like the basics. Yeah. And so I guess in terms of I'd say our motivation, inspiration for Project Up is very different from individual to individual of the organization based on where we were at the time. So personally, for me, in terms of Project Up and my inspiration behind it, it was actually interesting. So before Project Up was a thing, we had two of the other exec members. They were doing sort of ad hoc projects that pertained more to leadership and mentorship programs. And they were doing it at like a middle school. They worked with a few girls, I believe from 5 to 10 girls. And I believe that was going for either weekly or bi-weekly sessions at a time. And they were doing that while they were in university. And I was doing this completely separately. I realized that there was a lack of sports and really safe spaces for Muslim girls to just engage in sports, where, for instance, if a Muslim girl wants to come and play, but want to take off their hijab. There really isn't a space for that, at least at the time. And so I was able to create like just a mini basketball program at a local middle school. And that ran, I believe, bi-weekly at the time. And so we were doing this simultaneously. And these were friends of ours. And we essentially recognized that we were doing like the target populations for both programs were the same girls. So it would be both girls going to the different things. And then we just decided, we're like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity for us to bring this together somehow, some way, and make it more comprehensive. And I think we ran Ramadan potluck. That was one of our first events as like a whole group. And I think you were in attendance.
Yeah.
I think were you new to the country?
I was very new.
Yeah, I think she was new to the country. And she attended, alhamdulillah, the Ramadan potluck, which is a success. I think it was like 30 to 40 girls in one space.
Yeah.
And you were really interested in our work. We were this was beginning stages. Like we had no idea what we were doing.
No funding,
nothing. Yeah. We always say that our mothers were the backbone of our organization starting. So they believed in our work. So they provided, like they would literally give us money, space. Like I think it was at Aduksi.
Yeah.
I don't know, like a Somali school. But,
yeah.
So
school.
so that's where we had our Ramadan potluck, and then they would give us money for decorations and the food and everything, and the technology as well to do the program, or sorry, the event. And yeah, and Sara was in attendance. She was really interested in our work and joining. And I think we continued doing ad hoc, so like random events throughout the years. And then it wasn't until 2019 when myself, Sara, and another member, Khair, decided, I think we can do this on a more serious level. And we applied to the Ontario Trillium Foundation. It was a big grant. We've never had grants before prior to this. So this was our very first grant. And we
actually had one, which was, I have to say,
it
was a $400 grant. And we were over the moon that someone actually looked at us and was like, okay, yeah, let's give them money.
Yes.
So, but then from the 400, it went on to this very large amount of,
like hundreds of thousands. And like,
Shama.
yeah, we had no idea that like we'd get it.
Yeah.
We just kind of shot, like we just,
we're
like, oh, whatever. We did it. And alhamdulillah, we were able to get it. And that's really what started the organization on a more structural level. Yeah.
Oh, mashallah. That sounds amazing. I have to say it's even more rewarding when you just kind of do it because you want to get people involved and you want to provide spaces, like you said, that may have not existed in the past. And I think that's why when you are able to get a grant like that, it feels even more sort of, I don't know, it feels like somebody sees us, there's something happening. Someone wants to really support us and sees our vision and really believes in us. So inshallah, that's amazing. Now I know you talked about a little about sort of trying to sort of fill in a gap in terms of what Black Muslim women, in particular Black Muslim girls, would need in the community, and kind of what was missing, and spaces that would make them feel safe. What about that in particular? Why was that important to you? Like, what did it mean to you? And why was that the focus? I mean, there could have been a lot of other things that you could have focused on, right? So why that in particular?
I think for a lot of us, we kind of saw ourselves in those girls. Like at one point we needed that, someone to mentor you, or someone to provide you with the necessary like leadership skills in order for you to succeed. Or as Shama was saying, so Shama's the athletic one. I'm not. So maybe, Shama saw herself, I guess, in the girls that wanted to, play basketball, play soccer, but never had like the space to do that. So I think it was kind of like the sense of responsibility that we should make this happen.
Yeah.
And that's how I guess it worked. And I guess with the funding, it became like even like a more of a big responsibility that we have to do this. Like we wanted to do this, obviously, but now obviously with the funding and all, it became like very serious.
I would say also a sense of community, which I think your experience is different because she came from abroad. And I think that's what you're looking for coming in.
Yeah.
But I don't know how like the whole, like the I guess the difficulties around being a Black Muslim and sitting at the different intersections from being a woman to being a Black person to being a Muslim. I guess, like, what was your experience abroad versus here? Because she was very passionate coming in, where she's like, we need, spaces for Black Muslim people specifically, and
Yeah.
And you're very, mashallah, you're very passionate about that. Yeah.
What lit that flame for you? What was it?
I think because when I came here, it was kind of like starting from scratch. You're kind of starting from zero. I moved from a place where I had all the connections, everything was secured, and then having here to start from zero was just like wow, like a shock.
Yeah.
And for me myself, I needed mentors and I didn't know where to go to. So when I attended that potluck and I heard about all the amazing things that they wanted to do, I was like, that's where I see myself. Like, there's some experience that I can bring in. And then, like, I know there's obviously people that are in the same boat that are also looking for mentorship. So I was like, this is something great. And I have to be involved in this. So I guess that was the drive, just the looking for mentorship aspect thing.
Yeah. I think that's like a huge lack. And I think, we have programs in the city that, you have the sports program, you have the mentorship or leadership, but nothing that was unique to our own experiences, to our own identities. And I think with all of us, I was saying earlier to someone where a lot of us were elder sisters in our families. So we were the first navigating universities. We were the first navigating careers. We were the first navigating masters, PhDs. Like, this was all a first to us. And there's the difficulty is amplified, especially when you don't have mentors in these spaces. You don't have people that you could go to, be like somebody that has already gone through it, to be able to ask them the questions or get the support or the resources or what have you. And I think ultimately it was a matter of us recognizing these difficulties, and we didn't want people younger than us coming into these spaces also having to deal with these difficulties and these issues. And it was us, like Sara said, it was an obligation on us as the older sisters, but at the same time, we wanted them to be able to dream bigger than us. And like, really, like, at least for me, when I came into university, a lot of the Muslim girls and the Black Muslim girls you would see in very specific programs. My cohort, I think there were less than 10 Black people. And then I think there was less than 5 Muslim girls in my program. And my program was 100, 200 people in the cohort. And so it was such a, like, there were pockets of us throughout the university space, but you wouldn't, a lot of these girls would go into these fields because they see other people that look like them. But then what does it mean for them to be able to be like, oh, so I was exposed to a job or I went to an event that was in the tech space, which is something that we did in the past. And somebody was talking about a certain role. And now I'm really interested in engineering, right? Like, and really expanding their ability to dream about the things that they could do and being able to be there to support them with the resources and the opportunities, so they don't have to think about the difficulties. It's more of dream as far as you can, and we'll be there to provide you with the mentorship, the support, the resources, the access, and that sort of thing.
So it was a way for you to broaden their horizons, and a way for you to be able to say that this is actually an option for you. You can do this. And you're right, sometimes that's the sort of inspiration we need, to see someone in it.
100%.
That intersectionality of those 3 parts of us, being Black, being Muslim, being woman, that's such a unique sort of situation to be in. And I think a lot of us spent quite a bit of time being outsiders more than we did being on the inside. And, because there's so many different parts, maybe we can relate on one part, but not on the other, and so on and so forth. So the challenges are definitely very unique to us. So sort of speaking on those challenges, I know we talked about the way that having that grant and having those opportunities helped with the project. Sort of, if we were to switch gears, what would have been some of the hurdles that you faced while you were working on this project and bringing together all these ideas and these projects and bringing them into fruition? Because, we can see what Project Up is, right? We can see that your legacy is going to exist for a long time. you've definitely touched a lot of hearts. I attended the Legacy Gala, so I definitely saw the light in every single person's eyes. Like there was something there for every individual that was in that room, and there was no one that was left untouched. Clear that, Project Up is, your legacy is very much a testament of what can happen when you have that conviction and you have that drive and you have that commitment and you have that fire that Sara was kind of describing to us, that fire for what you want to exist. But what happens? What are some of those things that we're kind of trying to put out that fire? What were some of those things that were kind of maybe standing in your way? And if they were standing in your way, how did you overcome them? And how did you manage to continue with the project?
I would definitely say one of the biggest challenges was definitely COVID. So we applied to this grant at the end of 2019, and then we got it early 2020. So that's exactly when COVID hit. And when we initially applied for the grant, obviously we didn't see COVID coming. So we had planned the next 3 years, all the programs for everything to be like almost everything to be in person.
Yeah.
And when COVID hit and we luckily got the grant, we had to switch everything to like an online model. It was also a time where people were having online fatigue. School was online, work was online. Yeah. So like also trying to encourage people to attend events when they're already having that fatigue from the online space. That was definitely, I guess, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah. Especially with youth, there's really like, if there's no incentive, as in if this is not for school, if I'm not getting paid and I'm not going to come to an event and eat, like, why am I here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Especially if they have obligations like university and potentially an actual job. Right. So yeah, I think that was the biggest, because we really had to overhaul like our whole, like all the programs, everything, that we had to really rethink what this work could look like in the online space. But it was so important for us to take our community with us and sort of really lean into them in terms of, it's not programs, we're not telling you what you need. It was, hey, let's have a conversation of what you think you need right now. And let's see how we could change our programming, our ways of thinking, and the types of sort of services that we can provide to you during this like really difficult time. I'd say on the internal side, in terms of the challenges that we as an exec team had, I'd say one of the first issues, it's funny to look back at now, subhanAllah, but when we started, we had, alhamdulillah, a lot of support from, family and friends of starting Project Up. And it was work that, was told by our community that like it was much needed and something that they were sort of looking forward to, which was really nice to hear, especially because a lot of the moms in the community would come to us and say, hey, like, my daughter needs help with this and that. And so it was a great way for them to now come to an organization of people versus individuals in the community. But one of the biggest challenges was, why Black Muslim girls? Like, why not just Muslim girls? And these were coming from like people like uncles directly from our communities. Like why Black Muslim girls? Like, why such a specific niche? And I remember they would say that like, you're cornering yourself into sort of a corner of just providing it to this when you could, give it to all Muslim girls or what have you. And now saying that, it's probably like you first, we recognize the need, but now looking back, people, like if somebody were to get that question now, they'd be like, oh, that's like, a bit weird. But at the time, that was the question that we'd get, and something that like we had to, as a team, come together and be like, okay, like, like telling ourselves what our intention is with the organization and why Black Muslim girls, because we're also intentional creating events where we literally say, while you're buying your ticket for our event, for instance, like, you have to be a Black Muslim girl in order to enter this space, because if not, that might compromise the space in terms of safety and them feeling like they belong to something. And really for us, it was because there is none of that. And the reason why there isn't an organization like that is because they probably got these questions and they probably weren't able to answer
them.
And then it just becomes a cycle, right? And so we recognize that we were unique, in this space. But as well, I think for us, it was hiring people that were Black Muslim women. I think that was really important for representation's sake. But also another challenge I'd say was capacity in our team. A lot of us were working full-time jobs or students. That was really hard because we were, I guess, navigating our full-time whatever. And then on top of that, it was project up. So it'd be literally you'd work or be a student. And then a few hours later, you had to show up to an event and figure out that, or like show up to meetings.
Weekly meetings, yeah.
And sometimes it'd be multiple meetings, right, with partners, especially in the beginning. I was a part of a million meetings in the beginning. I remember just introducing the organization to different city people and partners and that sort of thing. But capacity was a huge issue in the beginning. Alhamdulillah, we were able to figure out over time by reducing people's hours and increasing people depending on their. But also, I think transparency was huge in the organization. And honest and being like,
just being respectful of each other and like understanding that we all have commitments on the side. And I think that's very common with like nonprofit organizations that I don't think everyone does this like full time. So we were just being respectful of each other, understanding each other's commitments. And like if I needed some time off, I'd be like, hey, I'm really busy with my school, I need some time off. Someone else was ready to chime in and take over my job. So I'm glad that was there.
And creating boundaries. Like a lot of us would be messaging people at night, but then it'd be like, okay, a boundary is if it's work related, it stays on Slack. And you can't message people after a certain point.
Because we were also friends, and so it was very hard to draw that distinction where we're like, okay, this has to go on iMessage or it has to go to Slack. So and
that took time. I'd say like it wasn't something that we were able to get right in the beginning, especially if you needed quick answers. Like I can't wait for you to message me on Slack when I need an answer immediately. And so it took time, but alhamdulillah, we were able to get to that, especially when you gain momentum as an organization. But I'd say we had a lot of internal and external challenges that we have to navigate. But I think the reason why we were successful is because we were able to be honest with each other, be transparent. If there are any issues, it would never blow over. It would never be a fight. We keep things on an individual basis. For instance, if I had an issue with another exec member, I'll have that conversation one-on-one. And very rarely did we have to go outside of that, right? And if it was an issue that we, like, for instance, one issue that came up a lot in an organization was accountability, in terms of if you're accountable for your own, like if you're not accountable for your own sort of tasks and things, what as a team can we do in order for us to stay on track? And so we created workshops and different things within the team to sort of address that issue versus like blaming an individual person or going about it that way.
So something like team building workshops, right? So something to kind of, learn how to communicate better or learn how to do X, Y, Z within the team, not just for others outside of that team.
Exactly. It was
team building, strategic retreats, you name it, we did it. But they were all very like useful, I guess.
100%. It was like, and people felt included in the process of trying to address the issues. And it was an empowering thing of, hey, this is not working for me. For instance, Asana is a platform that we use in the beginning as a way to organize ourselves. It was not working at all. And so we stopped using it. And then one team member found a platform called Notion, and they found it through their own job, like their full-time job. And they said, hey, let's try this out. And alhamdulillah, like it worked out, and people are actually started using it personally as well outside of the professional space. So just creating a safe space to be able to vocalize like, I'm not in the space to do XYZ, or hey, like this is just not working for me, and being able to have conversations in an honest way. And then from there working on, okay, what can we do on a more structural organizational way to address this issue? Do we need to bring in platforms? Do we need to have a workshop of some sort? We had performance measurement, sort of, I forget what they're called, performance appraisals, I think is what we called them. And so on a monthly basis, on a 6 months to an annual basis, we'd have sort of appraisals for each other across the team. So very peer-to-peer sort of basis, but that really helped in terms of, okay, this is what we did, what I did good, and this is what I need to work on. And going from there.
Okay, so mashallah. So it's clear that you not only put out programs that were meant to help or to grow the individual, but you use those same tools to grow the the team itself. So you as an individual, as part of the organization, as well as the organization itself, as well as those that were benefiting from the organization, kind of went through the same process of building and growing and nurturing, and you essentially led by example. And I don't know that many organizations can say the same thing. And it's just nice to hear that it was a work in progress. There's work being done in the background, and there's work being done outwardly as well. So I commend you for that. Inshallah, because that's a lot, that's a lot to have on your plate. And like I said, unless it truly comes from the heart and it comes from the willingness to want to do this, it's easy to get burnt out a little by it, because it's taking up both your personal time as well as your professional time, and it's also can possibly leach into your relationships, because you said that you were all friends well, you still are, but I mean to say that you guys were also friends. Alhamdulillah, you guys were also friends at the time, and your relationship developed into this I'll say a professional relationship, but you maintain that friendship as well. So kudos to you guys, mashallah. Definitely leading by example, and that's phenomenal. I love hearing about that. I know you had mentioned a little bit about nonprofit organizations and the perception. So even just getting a question like why Black Muslim women, or even the importance of transparency, making sure that when you create events or invites, you state clearly where the money is going to, because there might be something associated with that. So could you maybe tell us about what are some misperceptions or I'd say misperceptions that people have had about nonprofit organizations, and maybe how you manage that? I know you touched on some, and maybe if we could talk maybe more into those, or if there are others that you want to mention.
I'd say definitely a misperception people have is that they think nonprofit work is easy. Like it looks more like volunteering to people. They think it's like an easy thing that you're just doing on the side, but it's definitely not like that. We already touched upon the challenges that we faced, and because obviously we have a fund, but we're also like limited in terms of like how many people we can hire to do the job. 100%. A lot of us had to take on like multiple roles at the same time. Like we had someone that had to do, poor Zainab had to do finances, I guess like sometimes help with like onboarding and like creating HR, like HR leadership programs. So a lot of us had to do like multiple roles to cover that gap. So I would say, nonprofit work is definitely not easy as it seems.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think, so when we got the Ontario Trillium Foundation grant, which is a 3-year grant, alhamdulillah, and it was public. So we actually knew about it months out. I think we found out April, but then we weren't able to say anything until June. And it was so extra. It was done on TV. It was
like the fourth made the announcement.
Yeah, of all the organizations. Alhamdulillah at the end of the day. But once that information went public and people started recognizing that we got the grant and that sort of thing, it was interesting, because it was kind of like a situation of like, oh, like a grassroots organization got that, and like you said, it goes into the perception of like, oh, if they're able to get it, then we could do it, like you know what I mean, which is great in the sense of motivating people to apply and again dream big and that sort of thing. But at the same time, it took a lot of organizing on our end, a lot of organizing, like I said, a lot of transparency, and I think when it comes to nonprofit and grassroots work, there's not enough organization in terms of on the structural level of what happens behind in the internal sense for anything to happen externally, whether it's program events, whatever you end up focusing on. And I think what Ontario Trillium Foundation did a good job on is recognizing that, and they actually provided workshops to the teams that received the money. So I remember they ran financial literacy workshops to support of like, what does it mean to have a budget, like a template? What could you include in that template? What are the different expenses? What are the main expenses? And that was really, really helpful. And that was done by, I believe, a consultant in the financial space.
Even the organizational mentor that we had.
Exactly. We had organizational. So we had an organizational mentor that supported us, who's been doing this for 10 years, I believe, or over 10 years. And they sort of guided us in terms of their, I guess, lessons learned and them passing that down to us. And we, alhamdulillah, we had an amazing program manager, who I saw for the first time after 3 years in person, subhanAllah, out of protest. She's so cute. But yeah, like we had so much external support to be able to organize, because I think a lot of people look at us and like, wow, you're doing such great work, but they don't realize the amount of organizing it takes, and a lot of the different documents we had to create, a lot of different platforms we had to pay into, a lot of investment on an individual basis on all of us, from doing courses to programs to whatever, to be able to organize ourselves to be a nonprofit organization. And so yeah, I think the perception is that a lot of people do this on the side and it's very easy work. But in order to do really good work, I'd say, alhamdulillah, we're able to do good work while most of us were working full time. But I think in order for us to, if I were to say, looking back, if we were to do our best work, it would be in a full-time basis, 100%, to really invest in the community in the ways that we want. We'd probably all have to work for this full time, but that's very difficult with the types of the monetary funds and just not having the exact, like, enough funds to be able to cover everyone on a full-time basis.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot of underlying work that's done. And I don't think anybody really sees how much time is put into it. Right. Even that's a major investment as well. But when it comes to, I'm hearing you and I'm thinking, if I was someone, if someone has no experience in the field, has no idea, has never done any sort of community work, has never really maybe managed a project or planned one or planned an event or whatever the case may be, just is kind of starting from scratch, but has the interest and wants to be involved and wants to be a part of the community and maybe even take things into their, like, on their own, or if there's a population that they feel like they want to cater to because they don't think that there's a space for them there. Where do you tell them to start? Starting from scratch, like, what do you think? Well, maybe what are the first few steps they might want to take to kind of get themselves engaged or involved in it?
I would say, like, maybe start reaching out to, like, organizations that are, like, within your local community. So, like, organizations even like yours that are doing great work, volunteer. And I don't think you necessarily need to have experience in something that, like, you think you want to do. You don't need to have experience in able to do that work. Again, I came, for instance, I came from, like, a very science background, and I just wanted to do social media. So I just spoke up. I was like, hey guys, so I do not have any experience with social media, but I want to learn how to do it. So they were like, yeah, cool. And I think this is the, like a nice thing that you do when you're a volunteer or when you're working with a nonprofit, is that I don't think you really need to have that sort of experience. You just need to
be willing to learn and grow.
Yeah, exactly. So I would just be on Google and being like, what is the best time to post on Instagram on a Saturday? Done. How to create a social media calendar. So I kind of, like, just learned on my own. And I think a lot of us on the team were actually doing things that they did not have experience in. So yeah, just start with that, like, just reach out. And there's definitely people that are willing to give you the chance to do it, even if you don't have prior experience.
100%. Yeah, I agree to that. I think definitely do some sort of scan. I think that I'd say in bigger cities, you see it a lot where there's a lot of siloed work, but there's also a lot of overlap. And it just doesn't make sense. For instance, if you want to do something that's already happening in the community, we're very big in Project Up of working mutually with other organizations, where it's, if we're not providing the service, we could connect you to an organization who is doing the service. We're not about to create a whole different type of domain in order to address. No, like, it doesn't make sense for us to double up on something that is already in the community. And it's our way to really expose girls to other organizations, I'd say, but also to use each other. I don't know, like, refer and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I definitely say scan. I definitely would say volunteer. That's a really good advice. Volunteer with organizations. And also, use your passion. I started Project Up because I was passionate about sports. You were interested in the sciences. Alhamdulillah, we were able to have a few programs events that were health with a health focus. Use that as a way to guide you, but also don't stop there. I'd say use it as an opportunity to also learn. Again, I'm in my 20s, and if you ask anybody in this, the people that know me know I have done everything and anything. I will start something, I'll be head first, 100%. I'm gonna do this for the next 5 years, and then 5 minutes in, I said, yeah, it's not working for me, and I move on. And that's okay. And I always advocate to trial and error, because you have the ability to trial and error at a young age. Obviously that changes with responsibilities and as you get older, but in the beginning stages, talk to people. And I say this, when it comes to Project Up, the reason why we were a success was because we talked about it. We didn't, it wasn't necessarily something that we kept to ourselves. It was more of like, I have a dream of this, or I really hope, or I really wish that I could do this, or The more you talk to people, subhanAllah, the more those people be like, oh, I know this person, or I know this space who is free, that maybe I can connect you to this person, or whatever. Like, the more you manifest it through talking to different people, subhanAllah, the way that God puts people and resources and things in your path, it happens. And I think with Project Up, that was a lot of it. It was us manifesting it by actually just talking about it.
Right. So I hear you. I think that that's important. It's word of mouth, people knowing about you, hearing about your motivations, having that one-on-one conversation as well is big, right? Because sometimes, going back to the idea of transparency, people kind of wonder, okay, but why? Like, where is this coming from? And sometimes people really gravitate towards a story, right? They want to know what the story is, not just the sentence. They want to know everything, the behind the scenes and all of that. So I hear you. I think that that's so helpful to be able to know that opportunity is there for anyone that really wants to get involved. It's just a matter of taking the first step and trial and error. If it doesn't work out, you move on to the next project.
And I want to add one more thing is, don't be afraid to do informational interviews. And when I say informational interviews, I say sit down with the executive directors of, for instance, organizations, projects, programs that you're interested in sort of going into, and see what lessons learned that they have, what things that are they doing that are successful, what challenges that do they have, and where is the gap, and where is maybe a potential opportunity for you to come in and sort of do work, right? I think that is also a way for you to be like, okay, I recognize by interviewing this many people in this space, this is where the challenge or the issue keeps coming up. How can I come in and sort of address that issue? Because then that is an opportunity for you to create something new that is actually supporting the community based off of your research, versus, again, something that you just start out from ground zero.
So it's kind of doing the research to see what the space is looking like. That makes sense. Project Up is a big deal. Your community work is phenomenal, amazing. I could probably talk to you about it all day. But I do want to make sure that we do touch on the next bit about higher education and what that was like navigating it for you. For anyone that's listening right now, if you have any questions about anything, really, feel free to share them with us, drop them in the chat, and we can try to touch on them near the end. And we'll try our best, but for the sake of time, I'm going to move into higher education. I know you talked about your background in higher education. Could you maybe tell us what the biggest lesson was when you were navigating that space that you learned, and maybe refresh our minds about just generally what your background is in higher education?
Do you want to go, or should I go? You can go. I go. Okay. Just to, as a refresher, as you said, I did an undergrad in medical lab sciences, and then worked in the field for a few years, and then decided, this is not for me. And I got a master's in global health. So currently I am working in the field. I work in research, and I'd say the biggest lesson is that you don't necessarily have to just because you did XYZ in uni doesn't mean that you have to work in that field. I think this is a very old-fashioned way of thinking, and that we all should change that, especially in this day and age. You can easily, do a degree. You can get not even a master's. I know like master's sometimes can be really an investment. So you can, like a course or a degree, like any sort of thing that would kind of gear you from what you did, and that'll really open new doors. And sometimes even not even doing a course, a lot of times I've seen people do like work in roles that have nothing to do with their previous roles, and how they got that is by just writing like convincing cover letter, really, or like just changing things around in your resume, or like exactly, especially using your connections. So yeah, because and maybe Shama, you'll talk about this, because I know you always say that if you were like back in time, you would change your major.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, and like it is okay. Yeah, it is okay to do something different.
Yeah. No, that was really good. I think so for me, like I said, sorry, I'm like trying to get a charger because my laptop, but so for me, like I said, I did an undergrad, I did a Bachelor of Science. So I did I majored in health studies. I minored in political science, and I minored in political science actually later on in my major. So I didn't actually start off with having any interest in anything politics. But subhanAllah, that's like literally now one of my biggest passions, I'd say, especially again, justice in the politics space. In terms of navigating, so when I was an undergrad, I knew, I'd say second year, that I didn't know if I wanted to really pursue my major. And this is the mistake that I always, like, when I have any girl come up to me and say, I'm really second guessing my major, I always tell them, dig deeper and lean into that. And if it's really not aligned with what you want for yourself, don't be afraid to change, because oftentimes the excuse that I hear is, but it's going to like add another year, add another semester. But you're now like, that year and that semester is not going to matter in 5-10 years time, when you
are doing something that
you love, or something that again is more aligned with you. So I unfortunately didn't take that step of changing my major, and it was because, again, I didn't have people or mentors to sort of support me with that. But alhamdulillah, I was able to still minor in political science, which, like I said, ended up being a big passion of mine. And I didn't have a lot of Muslim girls when I was in university, so it was difficult navigating, maybe clubs that I wanted to be a part of, different volunteering opportunities, or even like finding people that have similar values on campus, because Waterloo is quite a big campus. But alhamdulillah, like I'd say my friend group was quite diverse in terms of backgrounds or interests and whatever, which was positive in its own way. But afterwards, and I don't know if I should talk about it now or at a later point, but my passion coming out of undergrad actually was law school. So I did want to eventually become a lawyer. And so I did my due diligence. Ooh, child, Sara knows this. I went head on. I applied to a scholarship to cover my LSAT funds. I ended up getting it, alhamdulillah. So I started doing my LSATs, and I met up with a lot of lawyers, and I talked to them about like what field maybe might be more interesting, what schools to apply to. And I actually wrote the LSAT twice.
And she did good.
Decent. But but like, and LSAT is so different for Bachelor of Science in Health, right? Like it's, unless I end up going to health law, which wasn't my passion. I wanted to go into criminal, or immigration law, or sort of that sort of space. So I sat down, wrote it. After the second one, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And then a few months later, I said, this is definitely not for me. And then law school wasn't something that I wanted anymore for myself. And then I kept going. And I said I wanted to do a master's. So I applied to this is where I'll end it. I applied to a master's program last year, I want to say. The end of last the end of last year. Yeah. Applied to it, alhamdulillah, I was able to get in. But something, my gut feeling said no. And I didn't do it. And it was a 2-year program. Mm-hmm. And I decided instead to go to Egypt for 8 months. So this is what I mean when I say
follow your gut.
And it's so important. Alhamdulillah, again, I'm so happy that I was able to follow my gut and be able to follow my path. And now I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do and stuff like that. But I have more of a sense of purpose, more of a sense of like, I have a better idea of what I want to do. But it took a lot of trial and error. And I'm so happy I dug in first, 100% invested in these things to say, okay, I don't think it's for me. And I don't have a what if anymore about any of these fields or spaces. So that's sort of, I guess, my navigation of,
that space. But I hear you. I think sometimes the best way to know if something is or isn't for you is to be in it, right? Whether that's doing research or to be whatever it may be, it's just a matter of being exposed to it. Just because you're doing research doesn't mean you might end up in it. And now you know for certain, right? Like you can say, okay, I did my due diligence and that's not it. I got someone else coming my way, right? And that's just the nature of life in general, right? Not just higher education or your fields. It's just finding your path. I know you kind of, I don't think we've really talked about it just yet, but maybe throughout that journey for the both of you, what was the most unexpected thing that you experienced? What was one thing that really blindsided you and you said, okay, hold on, what's happening? What's going on? Really caught you off guard, whether that's in the workspace, in school, or maybe something that happened in the workspace that you maybe didn't feel like school prepared you for, right? Life, it just wasn't it, right? Like if I had to talk about it, I would tell you that there were a lot of things that I was not prepared for. Like I'd say for me, it was navigating the work relationships, navigating the work politics, or even the existence of work politics was big for me. Just getting, So that was definitely something brand new for me, because I thought I just went into it and I thought work is work. You just do what you need to do. But then you realize that there's a lot of there's nuances, even in the types of conversations that you have with people, the people that you have conversations with, the time that you have conversations with, how you network, how you build, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's when we're in school, they don't really necessarily touch on. We're a little more, the environments are catered to us, they're built. That's and so on.
I think you're definitely right when it comes to work relationships, because that sort of things you don't really learn at school. I think stepping out of grad school, I thought I wanted to work in academia, and I ended up doing that actually. But later on, I just realized this space is just not for me. Like, if someone is able to do it, good for them. Like, that's fine. But like for me, I just felt like it was like a toxic workplace, or like just a toxic environment in general. Like, it can be very, very demanding. It can be very draining, and like for me, it was like some people might think this was a blessing, but it was like a fully remote position where I had like no social interaction with anyone, and that was a bit too much for me. And that's why I decided to be okay. I was like, this is not for me, and I am leaving. So I think again, it's really important to know what works and what not works for you. So and if something just does not sit right with you, just feel like it's okay to just be like I'm out, I'm not doing this. Obviously, if you secure another job, just don't do it just like that.
Not in this recession now.
Not in this economy. So alhamdulillah, after like a lot of months, I was able to get another role, which is working for me a bit more. But I think, as you said, Hannah, really work relationships is something that you don't really know until you actually get into the workforce, and that's where you'll be able to see for yourself how it is.
100%. I'd say adding to that, I think the shock was, I was working, I remember, as a community engagement coordinator for this one organization, which was tied to the city, to Kitchener-Waterloo. And I remember when I was working there, I was the only, I was the only Black person in the on the team, but I think more to that for me specifically, I was the youngest by years. I mean, the one above me was probably like 20 years older than me. So I was like quite young coming into the space with my hijab, like, you know, like trying to like, you know, do the work, whatever. But I think the biggest shock was how many people like you said, the conversations, the small talk,
Very
even the small
uncomfortable.
talk is very like people will be talking about dogs. It's, I can't relate. Or the after work,
Small talk.
the after work happy hours, can't relate.
And how's your weekend?
And they would talk about cottages, like things that I just like. We're not there. Like when I have conversations with my friends, it's so different. And I think, I'll be honest, I think there's like more substance to the conversations that we like. For them, is I will always say this. I'm not sure if I'm able to say this. But white people are so good with small talk. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. They're phenomenal.
We don't do small talk.
For us, it's exhausting. Like it's actually draining.
How was the weather? I'm like, I don't care about the weather.
Like, let's talk about work.
Let's talk about work, or let's get deeper. Where are you at mentally, emotionally? What are you going through personally? That's like, you know, like those are the conversations I'm used to.
Up at night. We want to know what keeps you up at night. How do you?
And it's just curiosity, and it's just like the spaces and the, you know, the communities that we come from. And I think the shock was going from Project Up, where we're able to have those conversations so so beautifully.
Like we'll start our meetings. We would start all our meetings with like, but how are you doing? Like, tell us about yourself. Like how are you feeling today? And then we'll take a few minutes, just like connect, and then moving into those kind of jobs.
And it's just like you can share depending, but it's not as safe. I don't know. It's not as and sometimes they want to understand like our experiences, which is really difficult to navigate. But it's a lot of people learning from you as well, if that makes sense. What does it mean? Like, do you wear the hijab or this, that, and the third? Versus it's like us coming to this space, having to be ready to persuade people or convince people, or to try to like advocate for yourself. Versus spaces like Project Up, it was kind of like you just come as you are, where you are, and you'll be accepted.
And you bloom, right? You're in a space where you're meant to bloom and blossom. But I think sometimes being in those environments, you're right. People are kind of picking and prodding, and they're trying to see, you know, what are you about? There's sometimes some people underestimate it. They see someone in hijab, darker skin, and they think, okay, but she's probably just really quiet. She probably just does her job. Like, doesn't, you know? And I think there's a certain level of underestimation, I think, that people tend to extend in that space as well, which is always fun to navigate. You're right. It's definitely, I'd say that was one of the biggest shockers, and I can see that existing as well in other workplaces. And I did want to, I know we're coming near the end of time, and I, like I said, would love to talk to you guys forever and ever. But I do want to make sure that we wrap up on a note that kind of we leave people that are listening with a little bit of something, and we also want to sort of have some sort of connection or communication in case anyone does want to reach out, get more information, and so on and so forth. But before I do that, we did have one question, and I think it's fair for us to kind of maybe close off with. We had one person ask, is there a possibility for us to see Project Up again?
Don't make us cry. Emotional.
I'm ready. Break my heart.
You know, subhanAllah, like I think with the ending of Project Up, it's crazy because I feel like more people started coming to our events at the end. And started hearing about our work.
Where were you before?
And like we're just like, oh, like we're ending, and it sucks to even say. I mean, with us ending, I think it was multiple reasons, I'd say, but ultimately, like we recognize that we did our time. A lot of us came in very different parts of our lives, and subhanAllah, leaving, you know, the space now, married with kids, doing grad school. A lot of us and one of the bigger reasons as well is that a lot of us actually didn't live in the city anymore.
Yeah.
In Kitchener-Waterloo, where all
Not
the
even
events,
in the country sometimes.
yeah, not in the country. Like a lot of us have left within the years of creating Project Up or running Project Up, and so yeah, like it was many different reasons of why we ended our operations. I'd say that we're sort of doing like small things, I said, on an individual basis. And a lot of people, like when they see us, they know that, you know, we're the Project Up people. And alhamdulillah, like I think when it comes to legacy building, our hope was always to empower young girls to be able to create organizations that meet their needs, that make sense to them, and be as like dream as wildly as possible in terms of what you can create. And alhamdulillah, we were able, like, I think there are two or three individuals who took on, like, I forget what the organization's name is called, but subhanAllah, like after the ending of our organization, we had a call. One of the girls called us and said, like, hey, we're starting an organization. And that was our dream. Like, it was kind of like, oh my God, like this is what we wanted for years.
I think they're doing it on a larger scale. Like for them, it's
Yeah,
like
it's
Black
not
Muslim youth in general.
Yeah,
like not even just
exactly.
girls,
So it's empowering Black Muslim youth in the Kitchener-Waterloo region. So you see us through that. At the current moment, we don't have any like plans of like bringing back Project Up 2.0, but you know, it's not something that is completely distinguished. Like we'll never do it. Because you never know what life.
Maybe wait and see.
Yeah,
maybe something will. Yeah,
I like wait and see. I love that. And you're right. I think we're going to get to see it and in the fruits of your labor, and that can be through the way that you pass on the torch to those that you were part of your program, right? And what they're coming up with and what they're creating. So I think we can take that answer. We're not too hurt. We're okay. We're all right. But in terms of one last thing, just before we end off, because I do appreciate your time and I also want to respect your time. I know we're about 4 minutes over. But I do want to see if is there any way that people can potentially reach out to you, get in touch, or would you like, because you know sometimes questions come up a little bit later on, right? As people think about it, about what you've said, maybe if we have someone that watches it later on, is there a form of communication that you prefer? What would you like?
I'm open to anything.
Yeah, like
if you look up my name on the internet, you'll find me everywhere. It's actually embarrassing at this point, but
right? So we have
maybe we could
there's
something, and then people can reach out.
Questions. I don't mind Instagram, LinkedIn. Like if you look me up, you'll find me. But and LinkedIn, email. Yeah, we can provide it to you maybe, and you can maybe provide it to your community. But it would be, you know, I really love seeing different Eritrean communities doing work in different cities.
Right.
And I would love to see like what it means for us to come together and connect different like different Eritrean organizations, not only on an annual basis, but like more than
often,
that. And being able to support each other, like us being able to come to your community and support in any way, and vice versa, and see, you know, where that goes.
Yeah, inshallah, onto bigger and better things, and for sure we'll continue to lift each other up and build bigger projects, and you know, have everyone involved. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's the idea is to create communities within communities and to have it expand forever and ever and ever. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate your time, like I said, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with us, give us your wealth of knowledge and your experience, and to walk us through your personal experiences and being open and honest with us, especially when it comes to the nonprofit side of things, and giving us an idea of what it was like to build something as big as Project Up was, and maybe even help us in the future, help those that are listening build a lasting impact in the community. So thank you so much, Sara, and thank you so much, Shama. I appreciate it. Inshallah, we will get to maybe have other conversations in the future, see each other in person. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll drive down to Ajax one day.
Yeah.
I'm waiting. I'm here. I'm here all the time. But yeah, I mean, that's it for everyone. I think, like I said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pass it on to us, or we can pass on or if you want their contact information, we can pass that over to you as well. They're open to any questions, and that's about it from me. And thanks so much, everyone, for listening. And I hope you have a lovely Sunday, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.